does your team look like from recruitment to training to operations, and what skills are essential?
Maturity and integrity are the big skills. Learning how to do this is experiential. You could be master CIA case officer for 30 years and not know how to do this. You don't learn how to do this stuff as a Navy SEAL. You don't learn how to do this stuff as a Green Beret. That's not where you learn this stuff. I'm a counterintelligence specialist. In the counterintelligence world, those skills are the most applicable. And I focused on denied areas, unsupported operations, and commercial operations for my career, which is a fancy way of saying I spent my whole career without a lot of help. Being able to operate without a base, without a fob, without close air support, without all the bells and whistles and tools and toys and all the gadgets and gizmos that the military and the intelligence community are so used to having.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing how to operate without all that stuff is really important. And the best way to think about that is to think about it like an attorney, right? Lawyers have been around for 200 years in America. If I went to my attorney today and I told him I want to file a suit against whoever, and this is why, my attorney would go onto his computer, or he would send a text message to his paralegal, who would go onto their computer, and they would go and do some research from their phone, and then get that into their computer, probably dump it into ChatGPT, and poop out a whole series of documents and everything else, right? 200 years ago, that same process existed. The same task existed, except you had to go to the library.
Yep.
And you had to write with a pencil,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to drive messages from here to there. Well, the legal profession and the principles of constitutionality and evidentiary sustainment have not changed in 200 years in America. But if I went to my lawyer and I stripped away his laptop, I took away his phone, I took away his ability to email his paralegal, I took away his pen, and I took away his computer, and I gave him a pen and a piece of paper, all the data is still out there. Libraries still exist. But I promise you, my lawyer would not be anywhere near as effective. We fight the old school way, which always works.
Yes.
In the military today, they are just now, after 20 years of fighting enemies who don't have socks, who think that plumbing is a novel idea,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Right? Who have heard about this thing called TV and the internet, but don't exactly know what it does exactly, right? We've been fighting that kind of enemy for 20 years, where frankly, we had the upper hand in every possible way that there is. Today's enemy really knows what plumbing is. They really know. They really know. So what does that mean? In the Army, they just now started teaching land navigation again, how to use a map and a compass. We haven't had to use those skills because of GPS. Why would you? We have GPS. Why do you need to learn this stuff? It's so old and antiquated. Why would you need to learn that? Well, if you go to Ukraine, Gaza, Israel, Iran, Russia, Syria, those are GPS denied environments where GPS doesn't work. So how do you navigate? If you're not trained in the old school way, you are combat ineffective. My team and I, how do we do what we do? We look to very, very, very old tactics, but just because it's old doesn't mean it's no good. And while the bad guys, we just went through this with Maria Corina Machado, a very famous operation that we did. We know how the bad guys target. We know they look at signals intelligence. We know they look at electronic spectrum. They look at RF energy in the space. They're looking at cell phones, looking at transmissions, looking at emanations. Well, if you understand how all that stuff works, and you can walk between the raindrops, you can not do those things. Now I can walk between the raindrops and not get caught. In that operation, we were the 6th attempt. 5 other very well-resourced and very capable teams tried and failed. Why?
Yeah.
Why? And a lot of people got killed doing this, and a lot of money was spent, right? I did this with 2 men.
Wow. And what did you do differently?
We just went old school. We fight very much the way old school terrorists fight, right? Where we use couriers. We're very careful about what we transmit. We're very careful about how we transmit. We do a lot of deception. So we'll put things out deliberately. We did a very large deception operations for Maria Corina Machado, which was central to the success, where half the Venezuelan intelligence service thought we were going by land to Colombia because we knew she was being hunted for 7 months. She was to Maduro what bin Laden was to us. So we know that they're actively looking for her. We also know that the Maduro regime was very upset that she got the Nobel Prize. We also know, like the whole world knew, that the Nobel Prize was on a Wednesday, and that she has to get, the bride has to get to church. There's a date and a time and a place where she needs to be.
Yep.
So there's a window of when she's going to be leaving, and we know that they know that, and we know that we know that they don't want that to happen. So they're on the streets starving for information, doing anything they possibly can. They were spending up to $1 million a day at its height to find her. It's a lot of money. A lot of money. So what do? We found some people that we knew were reliable sources for Venezuelan and Cuban intelligence.
Okay.
And we fed them, because they're starving, we fed them little morsels, right? If you imagine you're starving and I give you a packet of ketchup, you say thank you. If you haven't eaten in a month and I give you a little packet of ketchup, it's going to be the best meal you ever had. Well, kind of like that. They're starving for information. We know it, and we know why, and we know what they're after. We know the requirements. So we fed them a little bit through a few different means. Now, they believe that they're intelligent. If a reliable source tells you something, that's why it's called a reliable source. They believe that. The problem is that was a figment of my imagination. So knowing that they're hunting and knowing that they're starving for information, feed them a little bit, they're going to react. And that's exactly what we saw. We've done this kind of thing, hundreds in it. We did this against the Russians. We did this against Hamas. We did this against the PIJ. We've done this against all kinds of groups, because the reality is they're aggressively pursuing, they're aggressively hunting, they're aggressively defending, whatever it is. And people all have bosses, and everyone's got intelligence coming in and information. And a guy that I know told me, and this guy who I know, how many times have we heard that? Well, Grable Rescue is not Crash and Bang. We're not Black Hawk Down. We're not Lone Survivor, right? We're more like Ocean's 11.
I see. Yeah.
We're more like that, where the Venezuelans today can't figure out how Maria wound up in Norway. I'll go you one better. Maria herself doesn't know how she wound up in Norway. She's just a passenger. She doesn't know the workings of how we did it. Why would she? I don't know Maria. I don't trust, not to be disrespectful, but I don't trust Maria. She's right. So what she knows is she was told to be at a particular place at a particular time to get into a particular car. After that, she goes to a mousetrap that spits her out in Norway, where she gets a Nobel Prize. How all that worked, she herself has no idea.
Wow.
Why would she? Why would she?
Yeah, exactly. Incredible rescue mission. Actually, I've had a look at that actually right before this call. Really amazing.